Another Olympian with valuable insights to share is gymnast Laurie Hernandez, a member of the gold medal USA team that won in 2016. Laurie is famous for her upbeat attitude, but she also has experienced depression and eating disorders. This spring, she went public with what she said was the reason why: physical and emotional abuse by the woman who had coached her since she was 5. That coach, Maggie Haney, has now been banned by USA Gymnastics for 8 years for her treatment of athletes, including Laurie. So, Laurie, thank you for elevating the issue of emotional and physical abuse by coaches. A lot of kids in many sports deal with this, and it's often just accepted as the way sports are. Why is this not okay?
So, emotional abuse can be quite tricky, I think, especially with Gen Z. We've gotten this totally enjoyable title of being snowflakes and of being too sensitive. And so I think a lot of that makes it especially hard to detect when something is really off, simply because from the get-go it's shut down and we're told we're too sensitive, which is it's interesting. Don't get it. Maybe it's because I'm Gen Z, but I think making sure the environment is safe doesn't call for pushing kids past a healthy way, verbally and emotionally, and understanding that the kid's well-being comes first. Because as soon as the sport comes first and the placement comes first, that's where things just start unraveling, I think. And so it's also noting to the kids out there that if you're, getting coached and something doesn't sit right, communicating with those around you, and especially to your parents or to a trusted adult around you, and filling them in on what's really happening is very important. But making sure that it's an environment where we do put the kids first. I think that's the biggest thing that I got from all of it.
Mm-hmm. What do people need to know about how you were coached?
Well, I started when I was 5. I was in the same place / environment for about 11 years. And I think especially with gymnastics culture, that culture of abuse in general was something that was tolerated in the past and even rewarded at some points. And those are some things that I think USAG have also acknowledged in the past of like, okay, well, this happened, and that's a very big first step, but it's acknowledging that it happened. And because that type of coaching was tolerated and was kind of rewarded, I wasn't just seeing it in my own home gym. I was seeing it in my friends' gyms. If I'm going to competitions, I'm seeing it kind of everywhere, to the point where I'm desensitized by it. I don't actually see an issue with it. I just know that something feels off, and I figure it's probably me, which it's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
And so also just letting kids know that like their gut instinct is actually very powerful, and trusting that and communicating with others and letting people in and sharing what's going on. That's so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did that style of coaching make you feel?
Not the greatest. I mean, it's quite the interesting situation, because on one end, emotionally, I'm feeling a little bit down and drained and just feeling like I can't really do anything good enough. And then on the other end, the physical results, I'm making championships and I'm getting to all these crazy competitions, and I'm able to place high on a lot of events and whatnot. And so seeing those results, of course, something's kind of like, oh, well, maybe it is working. Maybe it is just me. Maybe this is normal. And, that was not the case. If you're not feeling safe and you're not feeling happy in your environment, then something's definitely off. It's not you. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of.
Yeah, no, it did feel good. I mean, how did it impact you as not just as an athlete, but just as a young person, as someone who's growing into herself? I mean,
Yeah, well, it's been a bumpy ride, but I think being able to speak about it publicly is something that's been very liberating, especially with sharing it on social media and being able to connect with others who have unfortunately been in the same situation, and understanding that the situation I was in was not something that's very uncommon and it's hard to detect because it's not physical. I think a really big problem and something that I had struggled with, especially when trying to heal from it, was saying, okay, well, there's nothing physical to show. I can't really be like, this is where it hurts. It's kind of just like, it feels like it's everywhere. And it's tough kind of not being able to see where the results lie. And so just knowing that there's a lot of work that's put into it. And yeah, it's just, I think it's taken also a lot of time in being able to grow into myself and understand that who I want to be is very much so possible, and it's in my hands. And now, especially with being an adult and having kind of all this time away from that environment, realizing how much I do control and how much I can say no to things and different things like that. So it's been definitely a very terrifying and scary but empowering last couple years, and I think eventually being able to speak about it was kind of that was like my voice kind of being heard.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting, or maybe it's completely coincidental, but, gymnastics participation has grown every year since the 2016 Olympics. So girls continue to sign up in droves. And congratulations to you. And we always know coming out of the Olympics that people get inspired and take up these different sports. But these new kids who are entering the scene, who are signing up for the sport, how should they be coached?
I think they should be coached depending on how they receive information best. And here's the thing, which I know a lot of people sometimes will get curious about. I think especially with me, there's a very fine line between tough coaching and abusive coaching. And tough coaching is good as long as it's safe and healthy for the athlete and for the coach. And knowing that I myself need a kick in the butt sometimes, because if, especially on days where I'm getting tired, I need someone to give me a little push. And I've noticed, especially being older and kind of controlling a little more the environment that I'm in, because I know what to look out for, um, that little push is so helpful, and it's done in a way that works best for me. And I know that if somebody else gets that information, it might not work for them. They actually may really hate it. And
Right.
so, if an athlete kind of comes up to you and says like, I don't like when X, Y, or Z, I think it's important to listen to that information, because already we're taught from a young age to listen, to our coaches. That's like, they're the higher ups, and we do a skill. And immediately when we do the skill, once we finish, we are not deciding, okay, how did that skill feel for me? The immediate attention goes to, okay, what did you think? How did you feel about it? How do you think I did? And the outside validation is set from a very young age. And so if someone's able to come up to you and say, hey, this isn't working, that takes a lot of courage, and making sure we're listening to that is so important. But understanding every athlete is different. Some athletes may need a little extra encouragement and may need a little extra positivity, and they may run off of that positive reinforcement, whereas other athletes may need kind of a, hey, that was better, but here's the thing, and still make it safe. So yeah, that's my point of view
Yeah.
on it.
So I mean, given how hard it is for kids to talk to their coaches and express their feelings, particularly in gymnastics, how can coaches know the difference between tough coaching and abusive coaching? Where is that line?
I don't know if it's because I've been through it, but personally it feels pretty obvious, in the sense that it's just making it a safe space for the kids. As long as the kids are safe in the sense that you don't want to put the kids down, you don't want to be rude to the kids, you don't want to be disrespectful to the kids, because especially them being kids, will be worried to speak up about it, knowing that this is the culture that's tolerated. And other kids, you know, myself included, almost felt, okay, well, I might be too sensitive here. Maybe it's me. And they're kids. You know, they're kids. And the goal is to help them grow, not only in their sports, but as a human being. And
Right.
sports teaches us so much outside. It teaches you resilience, and it teaches you how to be punctual, and it teaches you how to persevere when things get really hard. But sports should not teach you how to hold your own in an abusive environment. That's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to teach you how to hold your own in a place where you feel like you can't, because physically there's all these challenges, and the challenges are fun, and they're meant to build you and make you stronger. But the coach is there to help guide you and push you to your best self, not to also be a challenge for you.
Right. So is it a matter? It's a matter of, if I understand what you're saying, it's the coach being positive, but challenging the child to be the best they can by speaking to, like, wow, I know you can do better than that. You're amazing. How does that coach be positive and also push that child?
Yeah, I mean, what's tough is that also I don't even know all the answers, because
What worked with
every
you?
kid is different. But personally, and a way that I am coached now, is given like, hey, actually, I like what you did, but here's the problem. And then factually explaining what's wrong works very well to me, which I think kind of goes for everybody else. I don't know how many people would really have an issue with that, especially stating, okay, like, this is wrong, and I'm going to explain to you why. This is wrong, and it's not safe, and here's why. That coaching, I mean, I'm thriving in a pretty good environment right now. And so when I go to gymnastics clinics and I'm able to travel and I'm able to coach kids, I notice that the best results come when I kind of hit them with the, okay, it seems like that was better, but it didn't work, and here's why. And then they get a reason for it. They don't feel the need to question. And if they do, it's a safe place for them to do so, because it's not their fault that they're not understanding something. They are literally asking you for help, and that's your job. And so if they hit you with a, oh, well, I don't really understand this, then it's our job to get creative and to come up with different ways and to help guide them into understanding what we're trying to get them to do, not forcing them or making them uncomfortable or yelling or screaming at them to do things. There's thousands and thousands of different ways to do things. And if anything, gymnastics has taught me that, you know, we're running skills hundreds, thousands, and thousands of times before we compete them. And every turn is different, and it's learning to adapt to that. So if every turn can be different in all those variables, then there are thousands of different ways that we can learn to treat our kids respectfully.
Right. It sounds like what works with you is kind of like a praise sandwich. You start with the praise, and then you move to the very constructive, specific guidance on how you can improve, as opposed to starting with the demeaning and staying with the pressure, right? Am I getting this
I mean,
right?
that works for me, but then I can tell you that my teammate doesn't work well with that at all. She actually needs someone to be like, yeah, no, but here's why. So the positive almost, she just doesn't really work well with that. But there's still a way to be positive without like kind of, there's also no reason to like comfort blanket everybody. It's in the sense of making it a safe environment. That's the whole thing. I like a good positive sandwich. You want to give me a positive sandwich, like, go right ahead. I work well with it. However, my teammate, she's going to need a little, like, she needs a little more of an oomph. Like, she needs a, okay, no, but, but I have a way that we can make it better.
Right.
Whereas with me, I don't mind working in an environment of like, hey, you know what? That was actually better. I think it could be really well if we, so everybody's different. And it's not also saying that you have to keep tabs on everybody. Just staying respectful, listening to the kids, being in tune with the workout is just the most important part. I think also that's the foundation. You've signed up to be a coach. You've signed up to be a mentor for these kids. They're going to look up to you, and they're going to see the way that you handle problems, and they're going to adapt to that because that's their representation.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So just
Yep.
decide the coach and the person that you want to be for these kids.
Gotcha. Yep. So USA Gymnastics this spring suspended your coach for 8 years for her behavior toward you and other gymnasts. How do you feel about the resolution?
Um, I think it was good. I mean, it took a little too long to get there, and the case was opened on an Olympic year, which made things really difficult. But there was a positive result from it, and I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't quite sure we would get that. So I was pretty it was comforting to know that they did something about it, and it also sets this expectation that, hey, if you're coaching like this isn't the way to do it. This isn't right, and here's why. So I also think that it's a new era, and making sure that we're treating others with respect should not be so hard.
Yeah. What other steps do you think USA Gymnastics and the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee can do to fix the culture of the sport? I mean, any systemic changes that you would like to see made? Because, I mean, we're talking about a sport that was defined by the Carollis for a long time, and there was a lot of success, at the international level around that. But anything else we should be thinking about in terms of a systemic change?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I can think of as someone who was and still is an athlete and who doesn't work in that environment and per se, is just making sure that we're putting the athletes first and not the medals or money or publicity, but that we're really actually genuinely putting the athletes first, and we're giving them the proper care and the proper tools to take care of themselves. And just making sure that it is an open space, or that we have an assigned person that we can go to and share things with, and know that if we do that, A, it's confidential, and B, if we don't want it to be, that somebody is gonna hear us. Because I think that was a lot of what happened wrong last time around, was that A, there was no safe place to share with anyone. So, massive amounts of abuse were kept hidden and secret for decades, because nobody was willing to listen, and sharing how you're feeling was actually threatened to an extent. And so having an open space, having a person that we can share that with, I think is so important. But also having a system and those who oversee everything who are willing to make changes when things go wrong, because I think adapting is so important. And of course, you're not going to please everybody, but making things a safe environment is kind of the bare minimum.
Gymnastics is one of what sports scientists call one of the very few early specialization sports, meaning there needs to be high doses of training at a very early age, to make it to the Olympic team and podium by the middle of your teenage years. Whereas other sports, you can wait a bit longer before you really dial into one particular sport. But there's a lot of pressure comes along with that early specialization model, where you're tiering girls really when well before they've kind of grown into their bodies and their minds. Can any changes be made there, like maybe holding off on the tiering in some way or another, so it's more just about fun and enjoying your bodies and developing your physical literacy at an early age?
Yeah, I mean, I have definitely thought about that, in the sense of how can we still make sure that kids get to be kids before anything else. I think it's a bit of a juggle, and if I do end up getting a solid answer, I'll make sure to come back to you. But in the sense that I also remember growing up, and we had something called like a TOPS camp. It was known as the Talent Opportunity Program. You test conditioning, you test your skills as to where you are, and then those joint scores will come together and they decide what camp you go to. You have TOPS A camp, which is all like the higher level kids. You have TOPS B camp, which is kind of like the next best. And then you have Diamond, who are those who maybe didn't make the cutoff in the first two, but still want to come in and enjoy themselves. And this was a 5-day camp, and we got in, we had stations, but then we also had camp counselors, and we got to make t-shirts and dances and all these different things. And it was such a fun environment to be in. And I was 8 and 9 years old when I went to these, and I was traveling, and it was awesome. So I think it's kind of a juggle in deciding, what's best for your kid. Does your kid want to do these things? And if so, how can we make it a lot of fun? Because that was something that like I made friends at that camp where there's one of those girls that I'm still friends with today. And that's, that's pretty cool. You make a lot of friends from across the US and at some point across the globe because you were put into an environment that we all get to share together. So, as crazy and as tough as gymnastics is, and even though in the past there have been a lot of downsides, it's also remembering that there's a lot of good in the sport and there's a lot of love in the sport. It's why I came back, and I was like, okay, maybe if the environment is different, then it'll be a different outcome. And so sure enough, I've just fallen in love with the sport all over again. I love what I do, and I guarantee that there's a lot of other athletes like that who feel the same.
As much or more than you loved the sport previously?
I think so. I mean, especially, given the circumstance in the sense that in 2015 and 2016, I was so hell-bent on making that 2016 team. Understandably so. I don't take it back, but it was really stressful. I mean, it felt like a giant weight on my chest. Whereas now, knowing that I've done it in the past, I do want to make it again. But this time I have the leniency to really enjoy myself and to try new things and to see if they work. Because if they don't work, I know that before anything else, I'm a human. Like, I am my parents' daughter. I'm not just gymnastics. And it's also important for people to hear that as well. But I'm just excited to get back out there again and start competing because I do miss it.
That's awesome. So you told the New York Times when you came forward with your story that you did so, quote, for little Laurie and all the little kids out there, unquote. What impact do you hope to make on the culture of coaching in this country?
I mean, I hope that we can just make as many safe environments as possible because, I mean, across the US and across the globe, there are so many kids who maybe their environment at home isn't good and they come to sport for a safe place or for a sanctuary, or maybe they're struggling with mental health reasons, physical reasons, or they know someone close to them who's not doing so well. And they come to sport as a place to just relax and let their guard down and to be themselves. I think making sure that, we owe it to these kids to give them something really good. I think that's kind of, at the end of the day, it's just trying to build the best human beings that we can do. And sport is such a great way to do that. It builds character. It builds a lot of resiliency, and making sure that we can nurture that and make some pretty neat human beings. I think that's a good place to start.
That's awesome. Well, Laurie, you're terrific. I love your insights. Thank you for everything you do. You're an incredible voice for kids. Keep going. We need you.
Thank you so much.